Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarian. Tēnā koutou nā manuhiri, no mai, higher mai ki tēnei whare karakia. A te atua tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to this space, made sacred over the last 116 years by Auckland Unitarians. You are light and kindness, possibility and beauty enfleshed, the latest manifestation of the universe still in the making. Your uniqueness, talents, presence, and leadership enhance this gathering. Come, all of you who are burdened, be comforted within these walls. Come, all of you discontent, make a difference and work towards justice within and beyond these walls. Come, all of you in need of meaningful connections with others along the way. Enjoy the encounter, the shared stories. Grow together in laughter and tears. All of you are as gifts to each other and the world. Take your rightful place in life, here and now. And if you are a visitor this morning, we especially welcome you and hope you will join us for morning tea following the service. It is our sacrament of hospitality. I sometimes have to explain this to Unitarians, what it means to worship. To worship means to consider that which has worth. Today we consider with gratitude the many gifts of this community, the opportunity to be affirmed in who we are and to offer that affirmation to others, the chance to stand up together to help remake the world in the ideal of justice, the freedom to choose one's own path to truth and to learn from the travelogues of others. The space to expand one's own spirit and to reconnect after busy or humdrum weeks with the sustaining truths of one's life. Regular reminders that we must see our world through the lens of love and the aspiration to consider all life as precious, for if all of it is made of stardust, how can it not be wondrous? So this morning, let's welcome all of these gifts with gratitude, for they have been paid for with many currencies. The blood of the martyrs who died so that we can be free in our religion, the sweat of those who persisted in justice's name against hostility and adversity, the tears of those who struggle to build better lives for those in this life, the questions of our children as they understand the world anew and offer their understanding to us as a fresh lens, the laughter and joy of those giddy with the embrace of community, the dollars and cents of those who gave what they could and then stretched a little more. The infinite small acts of service that made the parts greater than the whole, done by those who knew themselves in sympathy with our purposes. So today we consider with gratitude and humility what it means to pay forward what has been paid forward for us. And now with all this, let us enter into worship with gladness in our hearts. As we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition and to each other. I have a confession. money and I have always had a complicated relationship. My parents loved to tell a story about when I was 4. We were visiting one of their friends during the Christmas holiday. Our host gave me a crisp $1 bill as a Christmas gift. Apparently, I burst into tears crying that I wanted real monies. He took the dollar back, went into his den, and came back with a roll of 50 pennies, which immediately satisfied my objections. I'm relieved to say I have no memory of this event, which gives me hope that the story is apocryphal. When I was 6, my parents decided I should receive an allowance. It was 10 cents a week, and for that sum, I was to make my bed every morning. Every day I failed to do so, a penny would be deducted. They told me that on my birthday every year after that, I would get a 5-cent rise and another chore. Math was never my strongest suit, but it didn't take me long to figure out that by the time I was 18, my allowance would only be 70 cents, to which I moaned to my mother that I wished it would be $1. I must have been a prodigy. In a mere 2 years, I had figured out that $1 was now real monies. I do remember this episode and my mother's response. It will never be enough. No matter how much you make, your wants and needs will be greater. What was meant but unsaid was, learn to be grateful for what you do have, or be resentful for what you don't. A year later, with my annual income now $7.80, I learned that the Red Cross was collecting donations for a family in our small Oregon town that had lost their home in a fire. I took my hoarded fortune to school and encouraged my classmates to add to it. We then took it in a paper bag to our teacher to give to the Red Cross. I was quite surprised when the local weekly paper mentioned me in a very brief article about our efforts for the family. Thinking back on it now, after being lambasted here for my billboards at St. Matthew's, it was probably the most favorable press I've ever had. Jumping ahead to year 7. My class was given an assignment to write a research paper on the career we wanted when we were adults. I thought I'd like to be a doctor. Many years later, when going through my mother's keepsakes after her death, I found the paper. I was amused and not a little embarrassed that my motivation for being a doctor was less than noble. It was not the healing arts that drew me, but my impression that doctors made a lot of money. The irony was not lost on me, as I had by this time been a minister for 13 years, not having learned the televangelist's knack for turning the gospel into gold. My adequate but hardly generous stipend was not my motivation. My reward for my labors had nothing to do with money. Still doesn't. It was the meaning and purpose that gave my life. And besides, it was fun and gave me joy. The only time I remember finding money or lack of it truly motivating was when I was 16. Finding my 60-cent allowance inadequate for taking a date to the movies, I got my first job. It being the early days of McDonald's, there were no burgers to flip for 200 miles. Instead, I got a job at a restaurant as a dishwasher and a kitchen hand for 90 cents an hour. It was a dirty, hot job with an irascible boss. I was jealous of my best friend getting a job as a stock boy at the supermarket across the street for $1 an hour. Suddenly that 10-cent difference sounded like real monies. I was by far the youngest in the kitchen. By the end of the summer, when the job came to an end, I had two strong impressions. One, I felt compassion for those who continued to work there as adults after I left and still could not afford to eat in the restaurant where they fed others. And two, I wanted to get an education so I might live to work, not work to live. For the next 7 years, while I got that education, I worked to live. The jobs were often mind-numbing, laborious, and necessary to society's well-being. Cleaning public toilets is no treat, I know. No one would choose to do these jobs unless there was no other choice to feed and house their families. At university, I didn't have to do them, but I did them anyway. My parents were not people of means, but they managed at some sacrifice to pay my fees and housing. I knew I was privileged and very embarrassed to be dependent on their generosity. I worked to pay my incidentals, and later I worked to contribute to my university costs. They never asked me to do so. Once when I needed a check to pay my fees, I remember telling my mother, "I'll pay you back as soon as I can." I've never forgotten her response. "You pay us back by doing the same for your children." That's what I learned, that generosity can't be paid back, only forward, with gratitude. I suspect that I'm not the only one who has had a complicated relationship with money. This is just my journey. We each have had our own. Money has a huge power over us in our culture. It's ironic. Money does not represent anything with value like silver or gold or love. It is based on a promise that the government that prints as much or as little as it needs will honor it as having value. Even more ironically, we have cut out the middleman or person. I rarely deal with currency. My pay is electronically deposited into my account. Direct debits pay my water and electricity bills and my pledge. When I buy my groceries, my FPOS card is scanned and the money comes out of my account. ATMs are disappearing faster than public phone booths did after the arrival of cell phones, because we rarely need cash. But even in a cashless society, money still complicates our lives. It gives us value and tells us what we value. It determines our standard of living and whether we work to live or live to work. It gives us a sense of false security and an ability to care as best we can for those we love. Most importantly, it is the measure of scarcity. And scarcity is about control. Scarcity is real. There's not enough housing in Auckland. We all know that. Housing is expensive because it's scarce. Why don't people move to the less populated regions of New Zealand? The simple answer is too few jobs exist there. Housing is cheap there if you have a job. They can pay the mortgage. If not, better to stay in Auckland and pay landlords astronomical rents if you have a job that can pay the rate. If not, you move to Papakura or Dairy Flat and commute far away from friends and family and your church community. Oh yes, scarcity is real. When I was born in 1949, the world population was estimated to be 2.5 billion people. Today, it's 7.6 billion people. Climate change has made a smaller portion of the earth habitable for those who were born with me. Air is more polluted. Potable water is hard to access. Of the total population, 100 million children die each year of malnutrition. At any given time, 793 million people are suffering from malnutrition. And too many of them are in New Zealand. Malnutrition is a contributing factor to 40,000 of our kids being hospitalized every year. There are 4.87 million of us today. And for a first world country, that is an appalling number of children who may not live long enough to have a complicated relationship with money. They will not work out of guilt or go on dates or go to school to have a meaningful work life. They may not even have an opportunity to work to live. Yes, scarcity is real, but it isn't either. Every year, Kiwi households throw away an estimated $2 billion of food, and supermarkets throw away another $873 million of food. Charity food drives have to throw out food donations that are well past their use-by date. It appears that even when we contribute food with all good intentions, we simply clean out our cupboards of food left to languish that we would normally feed to our children. Now, that is a complicated relationship with money. Today, we're in a season that every church must celebrate, as much as Christmas and Easter. This is Pledge Sunday. Boy, does our relationship with money get complicated at this time of year. Churches, being voluntary institutions, rely on contributions from their members. Budgets are built on it. Programs are planned on it. Ideally, it frees us from the fear of scarcity, a scarcity that is real and isn't. Christian churches build their case for donations on scriptural references. Unitarians are not so lucky. We don't get to rely on guilt. We don't have a God that demands it. It is usually a simple, rational argument. Here's what it costs to keep the lights on. Are you going to step up to help? A part of me really likes the transparency of that approach. We are a rational faith, after all. Tell me what is needed, and I'll do my best to help. But there is another part of me that feels we're missing an opportunity. Our pledge goal is 70,000 this year. That's a lot for a small congregation. If we get there, we will all be delirious with happiness. The finance committee will be tempted to break out the good whiskey. But that goal is just about staying the same. Reaching that goal says that Auckland has just enough progressive religion calling for transformation of society to be more kind and just and fair. That does not ask us to look at our complicated relationship with money. Do we possess money, or does money possess us? Do we give out of fear that there's not enough, or out of generosity that there will always be enough? Thankful for those who did the same so we have a place to worship and carry on our mission. Do we give for what we get out of our belonging here? Or are we giving for those who follow us? Or are we going to give with the same rationality that thinks cleaning out the back of the pantry is enough to feed hungry people and children? There's a part of giving to our mission that is the same as getting a roll of 50 pennies for $1. Thanks to New Zealand tax law, you get 30% of your charitable giving back as a tax rebate. So, $1 given is really only 66 pennies. Now, that is real monies. Amen. My meditation is by Tim Haley. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know we are on a pilgrimage here, but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here and now to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. I was tempted for our closing song to be the congregation's favorite song, which is Sing to the Power of the Faith Within. But I'll refer to it in my closing words. This congregation's favorite song sings to the power of the faith within, sings to the power of our deep love, our strong hope, and bright joy. But flex the power of these gifts too. Put your faith and hope to use. Share your joy and love more freely than you thought possible. For together we use these tools to carve out lives of wonder and purpose and service. Go in peace.